All right, hey everybody, it's Chris Lipper from On the Bus Sales Training Coaching Consulting, and this is part 2 of 3, and we may wrap it up today. We'll see on our sales system. And this comes from chapter 4 of the book. And just for a little bit of a recap, and I don't know if you guys are ever interested in anything like this, but I have a little cheat here. I don't know if you can see that, but that's our bus, right? That I made into a plaque that sits on my desk because I'm not above needing cheat sheets. And I have it then, and I can look down and just see where I'm at in the sales system. So just to recap for a quick minute, we've got an hour meeting that we have confirmed is an hour meeting. So we've already asked our prospect if they're still good for an hour. We have been referred to this person by someone we know. We used the name Amanda, and we said it was so nice of Amanda to introduce us. Why do you think she wanted us to meet? And we're starting with 10 minutes of chit chat. And then we are going to increase the volume on the questions, going from soft to harder, or soft to hotter, however you want to word it. But we're going to end with something to the point of, well, what's it costing you to not use someone like us? And, one of my favorite questions is, you're an ideal prospect for us. You're the type of company we'd like to work with. How would somebody go about working with someone like you? And could you introduce me to that person? But we have to earn the right to get to these places, right? We need their guards down. And we want this to be fair and honest and open and the kind of people that we are. So we're not, no offense to used car salesmen, but we're not like, well, what's it going to take to get you into this car today kind of thing. It's more of going with questions and asking for the referral, even if it's internal, but we have to earn the trust and the right to get there. And it's really treating people the way we want to be treated, or more importantly, the way they want to be treated. So we need to read on their body language. We need to see from the interaction where the conversation is going. And once we get through these questions, and David, we'll use you in your industry, so in the IT world, we need to do RCIP and recap, confirm importance and priority, the conversation that we've had up to now. So we would say something like, so let me make sure I've got this right. You've got a vendor that you don't love. You have tried others and they just haven't worked out. You feel like you're overpaying and they aren't responding to you as you would like. Do I have that right? Am I missing something? Am I getting that? Right? And they would confirm then and say yes. And then you would ask them and say, and I assume this is fairly important to you, that your IT is up and running and you don't have downtime and you're not being hacked and your client's data is safe. Is that a fair assessment? They would say yes. And then we would ask them what kind of priority this is. And we could even say 1 to 10, how important is this to you? And that's in case you can't get them on the phone at a later date. And you can say something like, I must have misunderstood. I thought this was a higher priority for you, or something like that. So does all of this make sense to everyone so far up to now?
Yep.
Okay, David, we're good. Jeannie?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I have no screens here, so that's fine. Okay. So picking it up in the book on page 36, halfway down the page. And of course, my phone's ringing, so we'll disconnect that. Hopefully it wasn't important. So the last line we read was, depending on how brave you are, you could ask them if they've given up on trying to fix the situation. So now we're going to transition to money. So the next steps we're going to do is money, onboarding, decision, close, referrals, just so you have a feel for where we're at. So talking about money is never easy. We shouldn't be afraid to ask for help on that, but we need to find out what they're paying now, right? So a way to do that is to bracket them. So we don't want to say, what's your budget? But we could say, have you thought about what this might cost? do you have a budget in mind for this kind of thing? Or if you don't mind, can I ask what you're paying now? Now they think you're probably going to size them up and say, well, if I say I'm paying $100, they're going to charge me $100, right? Which is logical. But what we could do is say, if you're sensing, if you're picking up on that, is say, listen, if I told you it was going to cost you between 75 and 125 bucks an hour, would that be too much? Or is that in line with what you're thinking? So that's casual. That's a conversation, right? We can agree with that. Everybody's comfortable saying something like that. David, you are? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So bracketing them. And then if we want to tighten it, so we say, okay, so if I told you it's going to cost between 75 and 125 bucks an hour, you would be okay with that. And they say yes. So can I assume that $100 an hour is in the ballpark of what you've been paying and are prepared to pay for this type of service? And again, they would say yes. Okay. So you will know that you went off track if you start negotiating with yourself. And that is the barometer when this step has gone wrong. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that has done this, but how many of you have sat down to write a quote and you're writing the number, $1,800 or, whatever it might be. And you're thinking, it's too much. They're never going to go for that. Right. So then we start changing the value to try to hit the number, but we don't even know what the number is. We don't know how deep their pockets are or what kind of priority this is. And if we haven't asked what their budget is, we just don't know. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay. And the worse than that though, Chris, is when they have this really low number in their head and that you think, how could anybody possibly think I could do it for that little amount? I mean, it goes both ways, right?
That's a great point. I always think of it the other way that, and sometimes we're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't want to even do a proposal if you haven't come up with some kind of leveling that you're in the ballpark, right?
So, and that's a great point that not everybody's worthy of a quote. So if we can't get this information, maybe you can determine they're not a fit for us. Right? So we all get to pick and choose who we work with. And this would be an example of one of those thresholds that if they can't cross, we don't want them as a client. Right? So yeah, that is a barometer. So once you know your dollar value, so let's use the $100 an hour, we can then carve out the scope of work and present the quote. Otherwise, you're just ballparking it, right? So David, I don't know how long it takes you, David Quick, to write a quote, but I imagine it's substantial work for you to create a quote.
I mean, the assessment, just a couple hours, and then the time I spend to actually write the quote, I mean, it could be several hours.
Right? Dave Castle, you too, right? So wouldn't it be helpful to know if these people had budget for you and could afford you and if it's the right size company? Right? So is it worth having the guts to ask? Is everybody here comfortable with that? Do we need to role play on it or are we good here? Are you comfortable asking somebody, what were they paying prior? And what do you think they can afford now? What their budget is now? Do we need to role play? Or are we good?
I've gotten pretty comfortable with it.
Mhm.
I'm good with it. Yeah, I've had a long history of not working with the right people because I wasn't putting myself out there in a way that I could attract the right people. So now that I'm doing that, I'm also good with asking if they can afford me.
Okay, and how do you say it, David?
A number of ways. It depends on the person. If they're kind of a lot of people, I'll say, basically, I want you to think of me as an artist, and you want me to paint the full color portrait of your business. Do you want me to just use black and white to do that, or do you want me to use my full palette? And I've had other people just respond right back to me. I want the full palette. I think, Chris, you're probably one of them. So that seems to work for me. It's one of the ways, but I'm also based on the research that I do. I don't know if you want more of an answer.
No, that's good. So I like your color palettes way of doing it. What I'll say to somebody is, who doesn't want to share a number, I'll say, listen, I need to know if I'm making a 10-foot ladder for a 3-foot job or a 3-foot ladder for a 10-foot job. We need to come to terms with what it is you need, so I know how to price this and what value. Pricing, it's making warm water. It's a little hot, it's a little cold, and we get to that right temperature level, and we can do that, right, as business owners, and make adjustments. Karen, I can tell you've got something to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Were you offering to role play? Because I still struggle with this. I have these times where I have like a team building session that I could, at the lowest rate, I could do it for like $2,000, right? But at the highest, but ideally, the ideal way to do it would be to interview everybody ahead of time, give them their assessment beforehand, so it becomes more like $5,000 to $6,000, right? So really, my range is like $2,000 to $6,000. So how would you, if you're talking to someone and they've started to be convinced that they need this, but I need to know, is this the 2,000 guy or the 6,000 guy?
I would say it very similarly to that. Say, listen, I need to know what I'm making here. We can offer you A or B. Just give me an indication of what direction to go in. What you don't want to end up doing is writing 3 different quotes, right? Because then they're always going to want A for the price of C, kind of thing. So I'd rather get a feel for what they can pay and design the scope of work around their budget.
Yeah. I mean, what I have done in the past is I will propose the full thing with the interviews and everything. And then in the email, I will say, if this is beyond your budget, we can talk about what you might take out, but this is the ideal way to do it, or something like that. Because I never just.
What I'm suggesting, Karen, is you do that first, not last.
Yeah, before I do the proposal.
Save you some work.
Yeah. But I never just discount something. I always take something away.
Of course, yeah, you're tweaking your value. That's right.
So, sorry, to question, going forward, is it I want to say etiquette, I guess, is it the proper, would it be okay to say, most of the people that I work with start at $3,000 and go up from there. How does that fit into your budget?
I love that. I instead of most, I would just use the word typically, which we'll talk about in a second.
Okay, sure. That way, because I'm feeling kind of what Karen does with that, and like so many people I have need everything. So I have to, and I'm also evolving as the business owner I am, into what they need everything I can do. So how do I pick the one thing that they can afford right now? And what is that thing? What's the biggest bang and that kind of stuff?
So I wouldn't view it as the one thing. I'd view it as the first thing.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. And I think, David, I think that, well, I just would, based on what you and I are doing, I think it's a lot more palatable and not overwhelming if you start with 1 or 2 things. And then they know that they're probably going to pay you more later on to do other things. But like it's about that first thing, like Chris is talking about.
Love it.
Yeah, and remember, we've talked in the past about monkey paws and things like that, where there's a way of, you kind of reel them in and the rope's growing. So we need to do some of that kind of stuff here. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Karen, did you want to role play? You're muted. You can stay unmuted. It's fine.
It's okay. I don't have to. We had the conversation, so I'm good.
Okay. But I want you to be comfortable with it. It's important, right? I want not just you, all of us to be comfortable with it. and
Okay.
it can become a wimp out area. So we need to just be aware of when we're wimping out, you know, so I want you to be conscious of it. So at least you know you're wimping out.
Okay. So, well, yeah, just give me I'll do a let's do a quick role play of you've already kind of established that you want that that you're
Use
interested-
David, use one of the Davids or something, or Jeannie.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
get Jeannie involved. Use
Okay.
Jeannie.
Jeannie,
Yes,
will you role play with me?
absolutely.
Okay, so pretend that you are interested in my team building session. You have a team, right? And you're interested in it. And let's see, how should we start this, Chris?
Well, you're trying to, she appears to be interested in everything you're saying. Her body language is all a go, and you can see that there's a need. You have RCIP, you've recapped, you've developed that she's committed to it. There's importance, there's a priority, and now
Yeah.
you need to talk about money. And you can
Right.
say, so we need to talk about money here. And that
Okay.
can get awkward, but let's have the conversation. Go ahead.
Okay, so Jeannie, it sounds like you're ready for me to give you a proposal for what this team session might be. We need to talk about money. I normally, these sessions normally start out typically about $3,000 and go up from there.
I'm going to stop you there.
Mhm.
So now you've already established the top. Why don't do that? Let her give you a number. She's not.
Oh, yeah.
She's not going to say 3,000. I'm going to give you 30,000. We don't know what her budget is, so let her answer the question.
Yeah, you just short sold yourself because maybe they gave me a budget that was crazy. Who knows?
Right.
Right. But usually they don't give it to me. I know how I am. But anyway, okay. So Jeannie, what do you have a budget for this?
So I kind of do.
So do you mind sharing it with me? I'm just trying to figure out, if I'm giving you the Volkswagen or the Cadillac.
I can totally appreciate that. How would you like to tell me what the difference between the Volkswagen and the Cadillac is?
Okay, so the Volkswagen is coming in for 3 hours with your team and going through their assessments. They've taken them, but they are just learning about them in the moment. Whereas the Cadillac is, I've gone and talked to each of your team members and interpreted their assessment. They have time to digest it and think about it. And then when we get to the team session, they're really thinking more about the team and learning more about their teammates.
So do you feel that the latter is more important than the first? I mean, I would rather just learn about myself, I think. I don't know. What do you think is important? Tell me what you know what? You're the expert. Show me your guidance. Show me where I should be.
Yeah. So the second is a much richer experience where you can keep the learning, and you're learning about yourself, and you're digesting that and really getting that understood. And then you're getting to, when you get into the session, it's all more about the team and how we work together, which is what we're trying to get to.
So what's the frame in this session, and how long of my employees' time are you going to take to get this done?
Yeah, so it's just, the session itself is 3 to 4 hours, but then I will spend about an hour with them ahead of time. But it can be over several weeks. It's not a major time constraint.
So Karen, I wouldn't mind you reminding her right here of her pain point and just putting your finger on that and letting her feel it a little bit, and saying something like, or you can keep hiring the wrong people. What's that costing you? It may be beneficial for you to do this stuff up front so that you don't keep having the same problem or whatever the situation is.
Right.
But when you're getting pushback like that, that's when we go back and remind them of the pain.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, Jeannie, we talked about how your team is struggling to work together. And so I really want to focus them during that session on working together versus them just learning about themselves and really not paying any attention to the others because they're so wrapped up in learning this information about themselves. So I think the second, you're going to get so much more benefit out of the Cadillac.
Okay, well, I can totally appreciate that. I mean, that's, I just really want to make it as efficient as possible
Yeah. So we're
Monetarily,
talking about,
well,
we're talking
yeah.
about the difference of like 3,000 to 6,000. Is that in your ballpark?
It's somewhere in my ballpark.
Right, so now Jeannie's being a little bit of a pain in the ass. And
I am. But you know what? Yeah, it's in my ballpark, and I'm ready to hear a proposal. So why don't you draw one up for me? Let's start with the Cadillac, because I think that you're right. We do need to have this either working right or not working at all.
Okay.
So the other part of money also is, and you know, especially when we're dealing with bigger companies, is to find out where the money's going to come from. So do they have a line item, for lack of a better term, or a budget, or, you know, so it can't hurt to ask where the money would come from, especially at the bigger companies, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to keep role playing? Because that could be a logical question, or are we good here?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeannie.
You're welcome, Karen. Thank you.
All right. So once we have the money in place, and what I mean from that is we've established that there is money there, it's available. We're speaking the same language. We're going to make a 3-foot ladder or a 10-foot ladder. We're going to use all the colors, or we're not, and whatever language you want to use. Then we want to give them a visual. So 55% of the population takes in information visually. So now we're working on Zoom. It's not as easy as we would like. So we need to paint a picture with our words to bring people in visually. So we're going to talk about how we onboard someone. Okay, so we're going to paint a picture with our words. And the most important word we're going to use is typically. That's just a favorite word. So it just tells me we've done this forever. We've done this over and over again. This isn't new. So we would say something like, so typically when we bring on a new client, what we'll start with is blah, blah, blah. And what we will talk about our onboarding process. You know, it could be an assessment. It could be an evaluation. It could be whatever it is in your guys' world. But I want you to talk about your onboarding process so they can visualize being a client. I want them to know what it looks like, what it feels like, okay? How they're going to feel once they're in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So Dave Castle, you know, in your world, you might say, so typically when we bring on a new client, the first thing we do is we take care of their Google issues. And, you know, you go into that a little bit, not too far under the hood. And now all of a sudden you're being found on Google. How would it feel to you if all of a sudden you were getting phone calls to the client, you know, that you weren't normally getting? You know, and people were, and when you ask them where you heard of us, they say, I found you online. How great would that feel? You know, is that worth $500 a month? You know, if you got a call or two a month to start, and it only grows from there. You know, I'm making up numbers, so I don't mean.
Yeah, I was going to say part of where my brain goes is some of my previous training is along the lines of balancing my fee with what their cost what their income per client is. Like if working with, if one client is worth $30,000 to you, like you're a roofer or something, and every single client is worth $30,000, then you can easily pay me $3,000 a month to bring you as many of those clients as possible. Whereas someone who's a client is only worth $20 to them, well, or you know, $100 to them, they're not going to be a good fit for me. So that's one of the things that I do my homework before I actually approach people. And you know, like somebody selling tires, I've been approached. The company that found me online is a tire company down the street, and you know, their tires are $800 and their profit might be half of that. So, you know, what can they afford per thing? That's one of the things that I kind of struggle with pricing wise.
Okay, so it's that may have to do with your prospects also. And you may have to rule out certain companies that they're just not a fit for you.
Right, which is
And
our previous
you
conversation.
can do that fairly easily, right?
Mhm. Yes, now.
It's not easy to do. I'll tell you that though. If you have a live prospect in front of you, it's hard to turn people away.
Mhm.
And, you know, they can qualify themselves and you can say something like, listen, not everyone's a fit for us. And unfortunately, typically people in your industry aren't. They can't afford us. Let them sell you. Let them tell you all the reasons why they're a fit.
Yeah, I like letting them close themselves, but I think there's also like an internal power with being able to say, no, you know, this isn't, you're not a good fit for this. What I do isn't a good fit for your industry. It's, you know, typically you guys aren't doing this. So,
So with all of you, your inventory is your time, right? So that is your inventory. None of you have warehouses full of product. So your inventory is your time. How are you spending it? You know, do you want to spend it making 30 bucks an hour? Or do you want to spend it making 3,000 an hour?
But I just want to push back a little bit on David on the number per customer. I mean, I think there's a lot of validity to it, but there's also people that sell small dollar products have to sell a ton of them.
Mhm.
So they still need you, and they almost need you more, right?
I get that. And that's why I also really feel very strongly like I have a very strange compulsion to stop talking about making digital products and actually make them and get them out there. So somebody can kind of try the flavor that they need. You know, here's some training on LinkedIn. Here's some training on Google My Business. And it's, you know, call it a $97 investment. So that's now somebody who's on a buyer's list with me and they get to try something and I'll answer your questions and that's always available. But that way somebody who can't really afford me can take some steps that can get them closer to being able to afford that.
Well, Dave, here's the other thing also, that the roofer that you gave as the example may only need 3 leads a month, where the tire company, they may need 30 or 300.
Yeah, 3 a day, right? Yeah.
You know, so that's also something that gets evaluated here. So it sounds like roofers are a better fit for you.
Yeah, big contractors, home builders and stuff. I'm trying to focus on.
Yeah, or maybe it's marinas or boat builders, or you know, it could be.
I'm going to create a directory site for the yachts in the neighborhood too.
Okay, all right. So at this point of the conversation, remember we're in an hour meeting. We're about 40 minutes into it, so you need to pace yourself. Okay. So we all have watches. We all know we're good for an hour. So just so you know, you've got about 20 minutes left to have this person close themselves. So what we need to ask next is how they go about making a decision, right? So we've gone through the whole system. We've RCIP'd them. We've discussed money. We've talked about our onboarding process. You're getting buying signals. They're leaning forward. Their eyes are widening. They're ready, right? They're excited to go. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's happy. Nobody's sitting with their arms crossed, and you know they're leaning forward. They're ready, right? We've got all the signals. So we need to know how they go about making a decision. And what do you think they're going to say? So if we ask someone, say, how do you go about making a decision on something like this? Is this something that you do, or you run it by other people? What are they going to say?
I think the general answer to that is usually they say they're going to have to run it over somebody else.
Actually, the
Even if
general
they say
answer
they're
is they're going to say, I make the decisions.
Are they really?
Yeah, generally that's okay, whatever. But I'm always going to invite somebody else into the conversation and say, that's great. Is there anybody you run it by?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it could be a spouse, it could be a business partner. David, quick, who do people typically run your budget by? Who do they run your quote by? The owner?
Yeah, typically it's the owner. At a small firm, it'd probably be the one person, the owner.
And what if it
Um,
is the owner you're talking to? Who might they run it by?
They may have partners.
Okay. And what if one of the partners has a kid that, thinks he's a, computer whiz? Could that get in the way of what you're doing?
Yes, it could.
Okay. So what do you think we want to do when we ask somebody what their decision process is? And they say, well, I generally make these decisions. And then you say, that's great, but is there anyone you run it by? And, or you could say, or if they say, I don't know, I've never done anything like this before. You could say, well, how'd you evaluate buying that phone system? Or how'd you go about making a decision to buy that refrigerator? Whatever it might be, you can bring in something similar. But if they're going to run it by someone, we want to be part of that conversation, right? There is nothing worse, in my view, than somebody selling for us, where somebody goes to their partner and says, hey, I met with this IT guy and he wants $3,000 to get us up and running. What do you think? And they say, well, why? We've got Skippy fresh out of college here. He can just do it for us.
Skippy.
Right? But you've all been there. Right? So we want to be a part of that conversation. So when they say, when we ask, is there anyone else that you tend to run these kinds of things by? And they say, yes, say, great. Can we invite them into this conversation, or can we schedule a time to meet with the three of us? Okay, it does delay you, but it's going to set the hook further. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, everybody comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Right, because the alternative is you're leaving a bunch of voicemails they're not going to reply to. Okay. All right. So we've talked to them about how they're going to go about making the decision. We've got our money in place. Everything's a go to maybe go for the light close. Does that make sense? We feel ready to close now.
Mhm.
So what are some of your closing lines? What would you like to do here? Actually, that was one. You can say, so how would you like to proceed?
Yeah.
What would you like to have happen next?
Let's go forward, is usually what I say.
Or should we go for? We want them to close themselves, don't forget. We don't want to push them.
Yeah, there goes
So-
my book China cabinet thing.
So you wouldn't say, well, it sounds like you guys are ready to move forward. Would you like to get me a check, or do you use credit cards?
No.
Oh, just checking.
No, I want them to close themselves.
Okay.
So how would you like to proceed? What would you like to have happen next? Typically, how long do you need to think on this kind of thing? That's always a good one. No, we're ready. We'll go now. Okay. When would you like us to start? That's another good one. Yeah, for David Quick, that would be a great one. Yeah. So typically before we schedule, we need to get a 50% prepayment. Shall we schedule something now?
So what do you think about saying, if we do this, when would you like to have that session?
Well, in your world, I'd actually like to do it from the other side of when would you like it complete? Because it's not just having, so the session doesn't complete it, it starts it, correct?
It depends. Sometimes it's just the one session.
Okay. Well then, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, you could put them on the calendar, get them scheduled, but your process is that you're given a payment up front, a percentage of some type. And by the way, it's always a prepayment. It's never a deposit. Do you guys know why?
Deposits refundable?
That's correct. And they are prepaying for your time. They're blocking time on your calendar that you now can't sell to someone else. It is
See,
a
I don't feel compelled to tell them that then, because I'm going to give them a proposal that's going to give the terms.
It's just verbiage. It's a prepayment. So typically the way we start is we get a prepayment of 50% up front, and then we schedule a time to meet with you.
Yeah, I guess, but I've already talked to them about money, right? So
Right.
they've agreed to the money. I just don't think that I want to talk anymore about money in this session. I'd rather just send them the proposal and they have to sign it.
Well, you're just setting their mindset. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to do
No,
that.
it's fine. I want you to leave with a check. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah, that's just not how it works with.
Is it
I
how,
just heard fingernails on the blackboard.
is it how you would like it to work?
No,
Okay.
I don't want to, because it's a professional thing. Like I've never not been paid for what I do. So, I mean, like a career coaching thing maybe, but not by a company that I'm talking to, you know? Anyway,
Okay.
I just think it's more detail for me. It's like, for me,
Well, maybe we should also look, what's your close rate? How many deals are you not getting?
it's a good question.
So, you know, a lot of us can be guilty of taking this to the 95-yard line. We've got 5 yards to go and they end up in our pipeline and we lose them.
Yeah.
So this is a way of bringing that over the edge, over the pipe, over the goal line.
I tell you, this is kind of like when I used to do solar in person. I used to walk in with a pen with my name on it. And as soon as I walked in, just put the paperwork down, I put that pen right in front of them. This is what you're using to sign this contract. It's not a question, you're going to sign it.
Oh, Jeannie, you are an acquired taste, which I enjoy. You're braver than most. And yeah, it's a different approach. You know, it's a Staten Island approach.
You hold the paper in place with the brass knuckles, right?
Better than a shotgun wedding.
All right. So we need to find a way of just getting it over the goal line, right? So using the schedule is a fine way to do it. How would you like to proceed? When would you like it done? All those things. But you need to find a line other than sign here
Mhm.
for most of us.
And for me, it's getting a date on the calendar to review the proposal with them.
Okay. So here's something else, and this will happen in the two David's world. Something else that they need to think about once we've gotten to this place, and part of the close is, have you thought about how you're going to talk to your previous supplier about this? Maybe they need some coaching there. So Dave, quick, you may think you have a new client, but then they call up to get all the passwords you need and they talk them out of going. Right? So it's not done until it's done. We need to carry this all the way over that end zone line. So Karen, I don't know if you're up against competition or if you're bringing this new shiny thing to them. But you know, we need to ask them, have you thought about how you're going to tell your previous person?
Mhm.
Right? And then coach them a little. So Dave, quick, I'm sure you have a list of all the things that you need and you can forward it to them and say, listen, you need to give this to your previous provider. You probably should tell them what's going on. And Dave Castle, I know you have a form. You want everybody's usernames and passwords and all of that. It's a little different. Jeannie, I don't see you having a problem, but Karen, you might. Right? You have competition out there.
Yeah, but generally I am giving them a new shiny thing.
Okay. All right.
But
so,
you're right. But you're right. I mean, if I did that, if they're
Right.
using disc, for sure I have. Yeah.
All right. Well, the last step of all of this is asking for a referral. So generally this works out very well. If it does, great. If it doesn't, great. There's no pressure. We're now at our 60 minutes, and just one last question. And you can say, hey, thanks so much for your time. I just have one last question. Now that you know what I do, is there anybody you know that could benefit from this? Is there anyone you could introduce me to? And then let them know your referral program. And by the way, we'll give you 10% off if you do introduce us to somebody who turns into a client or whatever it might be. I don't love those things, but whatever it might be. Okay. All right, so that is our sales system. And I just find, you can take parts of it, but you're better off having one and not needing it than needing it and not having it. All right. And again, it's one of those things where it's the difference between winging it and not. And what I'd like to do the next time we meet, which is in a couple of weeks, and please check your calendars and we can look at that, is role play with the 4 of you, the full system.
Wow.
Look out, world.
Okay. But it's the difference between getting quality clients, right? Everything we've done up to now, you've asked for the right type of referral. It's getting the right type of prospects. It's closing them in a way that works for you and works for them. There'll be profitable sales, and they won't be, a faulty pipeline of endless maybes. Okay. So I'm guessing there'll be less of you at the next call because not everybody likes to role play. But I feel it's important. And I know, Karen, you need to go somewhat early today. So I'm just going to look at the calendar. So that next class should be the 13th. There's plenty of time.
Yeah, I just got a call. I got to jump off. I got to go take care of something. A little bit of a fire that I got to turn out. So everybody have a great week. Chris,
Bye,
just let me know what date it is and I'm ready to go. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right. To the 13th. Okay. Will be when we'll role play all of this.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So just to end the class with 1 to 10, how was it for you? And any takeaways and what you're going to do differently this time?
Sorry, Dave, Chris, I thought it was the 6th of April is the next one.
I have it down for it's the 2nd and 4th week.
Oh, it's not every other week. Okay.
No,
Thanks.
we have something every week, but
I'm
this
glad
goes
I
to
asked. I'm glad I asked. It's the 2nd and 4th.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So 1 to 10, how was it for you? Takeaways and things you're going to do differently. Karen, let's start with you.
Okay. It's a 10. I think the budget piece was the biggest piece for me. But the whole thing is good. The other thing I took away was I know the onboarding for like my team sessions, my career coaching, the selection, but I want to come up with the onboarding for like if I do a conflict resolution or a partner coaching or a leadership development program, like a year-long program. I want to come up with my onboarding steps that come off, the top of my tongue.
Okay. And using words like typically and that kind of stuff when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the onboarding was important to you, and that's one of my favorite parts too. Dave, quick.
I would say 9. For me, working more on the onboarding, because I really haven't had much opportunity to develop that part of it, and also the decision part. And so I think that I've come across a couple of situations where it's like they have some other person that they have to talk to, and I probably should have handled things a bit differently.
I know we have a friend in common where you came across that and it worked out very well for you when you did better on this step, where they wanted to do it themselves. And I think you used the line of, well, do you want to cut your own grass? Or would you rather have someone else do it for you or something, right? Didn't that come up in that scenario?
Yeah, I think he's still trying to cut his own grass stuff.
Okay, but at least they hired you and they're paying you.
Yeah. Although he's not hitting the cost that much.
Okay. Dave Castle, how was it for you? And what are you going to do differently?
For the amount of time I was on it, it was a 10. I actually enjoy the role playing. It gets me out of my head and gets me interacting. I want to expand my onboarding process a little bit, but I really like, I'm feeling the need to really dial in who my clients are. I can't be everything to everybody just because you found me. I'm thrilled you found me, but I can't work. I don't want to work with everybody. My time is becoming precious. I have to spend time on myself every day. I have to get healthy and stuff like that. And I'm putting everything in my life ahead of it. Sorry, I made this into a thing, but I have to be very selective of who I work for and or with, and I like it. I'm really thrilled.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. Karen, I got us done by 11:30 for you.
Thank you.
And please schedule your one-to-ones prior to your board meeting the first week of April.
Okay.
Okay.